This lesson is on rectangles, rhombi, and squares. Rectangles, rhombi, and rhombi is the plural for rhombus, and squares are parallelograms. So all the properties of parallelograms also apply to them. A rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. One of the properties of a rectangle is all the properties of a parallelogram, and also the diagonals are congruent for rectangles. For a rhombus, it is a parallelogram with 4 congruent sides. All the properties for parallelograms apply to rhombi, and also the diagonals are perpendicular and the diagonals bisect opposite angles. A square is a rhombus and a rectangle, so all the properties of rhombuses and rectangles apply to squares. All right, so EG, we're told that this is a rectangle, so EG is going to be congruent to the other diagonal, HF. Since this is a rectangle, angle EHG is 90. And again, since rectangles are parallelograms and EH is 6, then the side opposite EH is also 6, so FG is also 6. We're told JKLM is a rhombus. One of the sides of the rhombus is 32, so all the sides are 32. And the measure of angle MNL is actually going to be MNL, where N would be the middle point. It's going to be 90. That's going to be that middle angle, the angle that is formed by the diagonals. And so all the sides are congruent since it's a rhombus. So JK is congruent to KL, is congruent to LM, is congruent to MJ. Here we have this is actually a square, 4 right angles, 4 congruent sides. So if QT is 17, and we have expressions for TS and RS, so since all the sides are congruent, we're going to set 17 equal to 3x plus 5 and solve for x. We get x equals 4. And RS is also going to equal 17, so we're going to set that expression equal to 17. And we get y equals 4. All right, in this quadrilateral, we're told that PQ and QR are congruent. Now, since PQ and QR are congruent, and we're to assume that this is a parallelogram, opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So what we have now is a rhombus, since we don't have any information about the angles. We have another parallelogram. In the parallelogram, angle D is 90. And since this is a parallelogram, the opposite angles are congruent. And the consecutive angles for parallelograms are congruent, so the other 2 angles are also 90 degrees. So this is a rectangle. We don't know anything about the sides, so we can't determine if it's a rhombus or a square. And then in this parallelogram, we're told QS and TR are perpendicular, so that angle is a 90-degree angle, and TQ is congruent to QR. Again, since this is a parallelogram, the opposite sides are congruent. So what we have here is a rhombus.